Welcome to Second Opinion Stat, health information you can use anywhere, anytime, brought to you by the producers of the PBS Health series Second Opinion. Here's your host, Dr. Peter Salko.
I'm speaking with Dr. Robert Holloway, a neurologist at the University of Rochester Medical Center, and Dr. Glenn McGee, the director of the Alden March Bioethical Institute. You know, you hear a lot about clinical trials, so maybe you could just explain to us exactly what that means and how these trials work.
Yes, clinical trials actually are studies that study interventions, and they do so. They're research, yeah, they're a form of research, and they're a particular type of research where you study interventions to assess whether or not they work. And
so an intervention is stuff you do to people.
Yeah, so they can be drugs, they can be procedures, they can be surgeries, they can be particular health programs. Essentially anything that you want to study in the context of a disease that you want to know if it's actually better or not than the alternative. So you study it in a very systematic way, and a clinical trial is designed to actually address a particular question. There are particular kinds of clinical trials, ones that are called randomized, where you actually randomize that intervention, that new either surgery, drug, or program to its alternative, like a flip of the coin, and you design it in a way that you can address that question.
So let me see if I understand this randomization with the flip of a coin. Someone comes in, you literally flip a coin or its equivalent and say, you get the drug, and maybe the next one flips the coin and says, that's tails, you don't get it.
That's exactly right.
And then you follow them and compare how well they do.
That's exactly right. And then you actually develop a protocol, and you define what measures that you want to use to assess whether or not the intervention's working, and you follow patients over time, and each trial is very different. So one trial may be 2 weeks long, one trial may be 6 months long, some may be 3 or 4 years long.
By its very nature, this means that some people will not get the new therapy, the new surgery, the new drug. And by its very nature, some people will do worse than others.
That's correct.
If there's any effect at all.
Yeah, that's the very nature of the study. You want to assess whether or not that intervention's working, and that's indeed the case.
Are patients clear about this?
No,
what are the ethical considerations that come into
play
play here with doctors and with patients?
Well, let's start with the linguistic confusions. I mean, if you've been in a bus or a subway in the last 5 years, you've seen the ads that say, are you depressed, had a bad week, come receive study therapy, research medication, you'll be given a full evaluation and $500. The language that we use to enroll people is very, very compelling these days because there are many, many more trials than there are people to participate in them. The first piece then is it's hard to get people to enroll in some trials, and in other trials, people who have desperation or feel hope, and some who just want to help the world, come to clinical trials with the sense that maybe they're going to do something that they really won't do. So some trials, you could call them, I think, interventions and really refer to them like you're talking about a therapy. Others, so-called phase 1 trials, the majority, the ones at the very beginning, you're really only testing whether or not they're toxic. That's it. So as an intervention, I mean, it wouldn't be good medicine no matter what for the researcher, and that's why researchers don't practice medicine when they're giving trials. Well, listen how confusing that is, right? On the back end, if I'm a patient and I want to get better, sometimes the most innovative thing is actually going to turn out to be the best thing, but I enroll in a study and I don't get it because the coin flipped wrong that day. And so people are confused, they're worried, and many of them look back at the history of research in this country and they hear the word experiment, not intervention, and they think about Tuskegee and tragedies with misuses of research by the government. So there's a lot of confusion.
And there's also the possibility that the new thing isn't going to be as good as the old thing that's thought of as a replacement.
In the vast majority of cases, that's true.
That is not something that's appreciated by patients who are looking for hope in the future. And I guess hope in the future is another misnomer when it comes to research. You can't have hope going into this. All you want to be is a subject. Anything else, you're whistling past the graveyard.
Well, I mean, they're studying it for a reason, because they do actually think that it may work. So having some hope that it actually will work, I think, is reasonable. Actually having too much hope that may lead to improper decisions is the wrong thing.
I guess I meant hope on the patient side, not hope on the researcher's side.
Well,
the best a patient can hope for is the research will be good research.
Right, exactly.
But you don't, well, you don't, what you want to do is keep two roles clear, and it's harder and harder to do it. The researcher is responsible for doing good research, and so if what's required in order to make that happen is that sometimes you've got to exclude someone you'd really like to include or who you think would really benefit. If it means that you can't stop the study in the middle because you're sure this thing is working, that's what you do, because that's what's ethical for a researcher. As a doctor practicing with a patient, you may be the same person, but you got to really change the way you think and look to see, often with next to no evidence, whether or not what you're recommending is, in your best clinical judgment, something that's at least as good as doing the same thing you do anyway or nothing at all.
Thank you both very much.
Pleasure.